What's up YouTube? I'm just another guy and welcome to a FM14 features video that I'd like to see implemented into the next game. And I've wrote this down all in Notepad, so we're just going to jump straight into it. And one of the first things I jotted down was an under 21s league. They currently don't have that feature in this game. And I'd like to see it implemented. I believe that it'd be good to have, another under youth tier, and of course this is in real life. I'm not going to talk in crap. I'm not just saying, oh, we should have another youth system in the game. To me, it makes sense to have the under 21 league. You can develop your homegrown players without having to send them out on loan. They're playing against people their own age and things like that, instead of maybe going out on loan to teams with amazing players and things like that. Struggling to play. At least they're playing level. They're playing football at a decent enough level. So, that's my idea behind that one, really. And basically the fact that it's in real life. It should be in the game if it's in real life. So, if they're trying to make the FM as pretty much as close to real life as you can get in terms of a simulator, you're going to want to implement that. Anyway, the next thing I decided to mention was the youth and reserve teams. I'd like to actually manage them. I think it would add a new challenge into the game. Of course, many people know this. If you don't know this in FM, I don't know what you've been doing, but you can have reserve managers and youth managers, of course. And I think it would be, an interesting challenge. Of course, the challenges faced with a youth manager, I'll go into my QPR team here, or this QPR save that I do. You don't have any control over your players. So, the senior manager may decide he wants to call up one of your players, and then you don't have him for that game. Your reserve manager may pick a few of your players for a reserve game. You don't have that player. You don't have much control. If that feature was added, I would like to see, a small portion of the wage bill or transfer budget go your way. Maybe you can sign some under 18 players. If you're a reserve manager, I completely understand you're not getting much of that. But, I think it'd be an interesting concept to have. And one of the reasons behind it as well, with my thinking behind many of these points, I like to bring examples, either game examples, bugs or fixes I'd like to see in the game, or real life examples that I feel, they should be implemented in the game because they happen in real life. So one of the thinkings behind that is because, Liverpool manager Brendan Rodgers, he was in the Reading and Chelsea set up for a long time. Under 18 coach, understand that, but under 18s manager for Reading, then Chelsea, then reserve manager. We built relationships, and he used that experience when he went on to manage Watford and Reading and Swansea and Liverpool. He used all them connections. He used his experience of managing youth level. It shows you that you've built your way up. Starting from pretty much a nothing manager. Under 18s. Not really rated as highly as Thingy. And in the space of 10 years, he's gone from under 18s manager of Reading to manager of Liverpool. So, you can make progression, and I think that would be a nice feature to add into the game. It's something I'm interested in. Of course, I'm not sure about many other people, but it's something definitely I've always been interested in since they've implemented that into the game. Another point I'd like to bring up is directors of football. So, they put in this game for the first time, directors of football, and I think it was a really cool feature to add in because, of course, directors of football are now quite a main topic in football, and I believe you should be given less control over your director of football at some clubs and more control over others. So for me, I started my career off really low down with Billericay, and let's say I got promoted to the conference, the Blue Sky Bet Premier. I believe, and say a club come down from Sky Bet League 1 into League 2. An example of this, right now is Portsmouth. Say Portsmouth sacked Guy Whittingham, and this guy Whittingham anyway, I was one of the hottest race property in non-league, having just got promoted, maybe we're doing well currently, and they're looking for a new manager. Maybe they would approach me, but because, in the game you start off 25, you're inexperienced, you're young, they say, we will sign you, but you will have to have a director of football, and, the idea behind this is your staff responsibilities. You'd have all these responsibilities still, but where it said, find and makes offers for your first team player, that would automatically go to your director of football. You'd have no control over that. You could not change that. Finds and makes offers for young team players. Again, no control, no choice over that. Finalizes, no control, no choice. Maybe the youth one isn't one that he could do, but it's definitely first team and finalizing. Director of football would have a definite control over that, as well with transfer listing and selling your players, and maybe even extending contracts. Maybe you could have control over that, just something like that, because you see that happen quite a lot in today's football. Alan Kirbishley left West Ham, wasn't it, because he didn't have control over his transfers. Maybe, you have to give up that choice. Maybe you have to have director of football. Okay, after a couple of years when you've proven yourself as a proven manager, they'll start giving you more control. Then you can have control if you want a director of football. Again, you have control over whether you hire or fire your director of football. But I believe that should be something that could be implemented into the game. And also, when you're managing them big clubs, say if you had a bad season, for example, Alan Pardew of Newcastle, you have a bad season, the chairman goes, right, we're going to put in a director of football and he's going to control some things from now on, and once you've regained the trust of your chairman, he's going to start giving you back your responsibilities. So I still would like to see of course, given choice over director of football, AVB Tottenham, he is a huge believer that directors of football work. Of course, director of footballs have quite a big job in football now. They're quite common in football. So I definitely think they should be added. But I think at times you shouldn't be given as much control as you are in whether you can hire or fire them, or what jobs you delegate them, because it's quite rare you see managers do that. Of course, AVB is an example of people who, work very well alongside their director of football, and then there are others who, don't really work well alongside their director of football. So that was my third point there. I think that's quite an interesting point as well. Directors of football, it's quite big, like I say. But anyway, moving on, players bringing problems. So, of course, the example of this is Suarez, but I wouldn't expect something as big as Suarez. So we can still use Suarez as an example, though. Say your player is being given the reputation of diving. You've got to deal with that problem. Maybe you get a penalty because of him, and they say, oh, it looked a bit light, it looked a bit, not minimal contact or something like that. In the press conference that followed the game, you would have to either stand by him or, disown him. If you stood by him, of course, maybe some players wouldn't agree with that. Press wouldn't look kindly on you, things like that. And if you disown him, maybe fans turn against you. Maybe players, who are friends with that player don't like you. I think reputation of players are quite big now. People like Bale, Young, and Ashley Young, and Suarez are being given the title of divers, and I think that needs to be something implemented into the game. Maybe troublemakers, divers. Mario Balotelli is an example. Troublemakers. Finds it hard to obey rules or follow instructions. Something like that needs to be added into the game, because I believe, because at the current moment in time, I don't think players are given enough, personality, between each player. Maybe after a while you know what to say to certain players when you're talking to them privately, but definitely when they have these problems, I think it just adds that little bit of, a little bit of dynamic. Dynamic, I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. Adds a little bit of character and unpredictability about what your players actually do and things like that. So that was the one there. And also about the diving as well. Diving has become quite a main issue in that and stuff like that. Like I say, I believe more players should, you're wearing, I'm not sure where you'd consider this. I'll click on a player here. We'll pick on Fernando Torres. Maybe under, preferred moves, goes down easily under challenges, try to buy free kicks, maybe you could have something there under maybe preferred moves or, personality, or maybe I don't know, I think something like that could be added into the game and it'd be a good feature to add. Let's talk about the next one. So my next thing here is changing rivals. So I think rivals should be dependent on, your league. So an example I can think of is, being top of the table. Say if I took Aston Villa, made them a top team, they were consistently battling for first places, always up there year in, year out, and, they were always battling against the same teams, maybe United, Chelsea, and City, for example. I believe on the rivals, it should be like, on the information screen where it says fierce rivals, other rivals, it should say things like Manchester United, league rivals, or title rivals, and it'd be like Chelsea title rivals, City title rivals. I think there needs to be some sort of dynamic rivalry system where rivals can change depending on the league you're in. So say if let's use Crystal Palace. So say if for some reason Crystal Palace are in League One, and they've been in that league for year after year after year after year, and they're consistently trying to get playoffs. And, there's always one team, a couple of teams around them consistently battling for playoffs. Maybe it's like Sheffield United and Leyton Orient, always battling for playoffs. I'd say, again, they were league rivals, they are consistently there battling for the same position. And it would be just nice to see, rivals change because, like with my Billericay save, I've moved up the leagues and my rivals are nowhere near me, so I have no rivalries. And to me, every club has rivalries. Chelsea, if I use Chelsea as an example, I say we have London rivals, of course. We have rivalries, geographically. But then I'd say Man U are our title rivals and Chelsea are title rivals. We've created quite a rivalry with Barcelona over the years since Mourinho's taken over. It's quite a history. Messi's never scored against us. Rivalries grow and, there are rivalries can be created and things like that. So I think maybe some sort of feature like that would be nice to have in the game. Next thing, I think you should have more control over your, when you have your boardroom requests. And one of the big things for me was when I was at Billericay, they built a stadium. And I didn't want that stadium, and I felt, it was foolish to build the stadium. We were paying off the debt for a long time afterwards. It crippled us pretty much financially for the next however many years it was. So, I think if the board can reject what you put forward to them, you should be able to reject what the board put forward to you. So, if they go, oh, we're going to build new training facilities, and then you look at your finances, you think, well, maybe I don't want to struggle financially, or maybe I don't want that huge chunk of money cut out. I'd rather spend that on players. You should be able to say, I don't want this. I think it'd be better spent elsewhere. And then the chairman should either agree with you, disagree with you. Maybe it will depend on a relationship you have with the board or owner or things like that. I think you should have at least more control over your board requests. At least giving you the opportunity to, maybe you put forward building a stadium, but then, whilst the planning is in place, you decide, actually, maybe it's not the best for us. Maybe you get relegated or something, maybe we should spend that money elsewhere, and then you can cancel it at a stage or something like that. I think that is a feature that would be at least nice to see. Match engine, I wrote down, obviously match engine needs to be fixed. And, I'm not going to go into it, everyone seems to know that. I expect that to be tweaked and obviously improved by the next game. So, yep. Relationships is the next one. And this is relationships with managers. So, of course, in the game, you have your favorite personnel, your favorite managers, and your worst opinions. And of course, the idea behind that is those who have the best opinion of you, they will maybe loan you players at lower prices, sell you players at lower prices. Oh, sorry about that. Those with worst opinions will, reluctantly sell you players, that you maybe ask for a higher deal, higher money, things like that, And I think, this would be a good feature to maybe improve upon, or at least build upon. It's got a good basis, but it needs, it maybe needs a bit more, improving, maybe a couple more features added to it. An example here is Sir Alex Ferguson, he loaned out his players to ex-stars of his, the example I could think of is Steve Bruce when he was at Sunderland. They loaned out, Danny Welbeck, Fraser Campbell, because, he was ex-player. They were people he trusted, people he knew, people he, had good opinions of. So, instead of maybe having an affiliated club, maybe I had an ex-player, now managing in maybe a division or two lower, and I consistently loaned him out. We built a relationship somehow that would allow me to loan him out players. He would be first choice or whatever. Somehow input that into the game where ex players or people you become really good friends with in terms of relationship. And now you're almost feeder club, but not official feeder clubs. Not official affiliated clubs. So that would be another feature I'd maybe like to see. Next, press conferences. Of course, I think press conferences need to be improved upon. They're pretty boring, pretty dull. I don't actually do any of them anymore. They're just so bland and repetitive. But of course, I think at least I know a lot of people would like to see them improved. I personally, like I've already sprung up, diving, I'd like questions about events in the game, oh, this player did this in this game, this player has got quite a reputation of getting booked and getting sent off, he did quite a crunch and tackle today, this player looks to be injured for a while. What are your views on this? And again, you could bring out answers like that. I'd like to see different answers and different questions put forth to you depending on situations and things like that, And also, depending on tone, of course, in team talks and in press conferences, you can be aggressive, calm, assertive, passionate. What's the other one? Cautious towards your answers. I'd like to see different answers for maybe different tones of voice you use. So, aggressively should definitely be different to your calm way of speaking. Okay, they can put forward the same point, But it's the way it's put across that needs to be different, you know. Okay, that's the idea of the tone, but, you know, aggressively you should be like, I don't, you know, say if a player got sent off, you know, and it looked quite a harsh tackle, you could say, you know, and they ping forward like, oh, this player is quite a reckless player, you know, they, blah, 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 blah. And you could be like, how dare you insinuate my player or such a thing, you know, he would never do that. I believe, you know, I understand it was a bad challenge, yada, yada, yada. And then calmly it'd be like, alright, he had a bad day today, you know, he knows that, he's not that type of lad, you know, I think, you know, I understand the tone needs to be different, but the way it's worded out would also, like, be different, you know, it just help you to understand maybe what point you're trying to get across, as well as, you know, improving the press conferences as a whole. And, moving forward to press as well, you know, when managing a national team, the press are pretty dumb, you know, they're pretty, you know, stupid. So, an example of this is I've done an England one in the past, and, you know, I've brought up a player like Matt Jarvis or Michael Kitely. You know, players that aren't big names and not expected to play for England. You know, okay, they have in the past. You know, a couple of them have been in the squad and made appearances. You know, they're not expected to get called up. You know, I've called them up for friendlies, and the press have gone, "Oh, what have you done calling this guy up? You know, he doesn't deserve a place." Yada 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 yada. And then, you know, I read that, I think, oh, all right, maybe he doesn't. You know, he doesn't play all right. He plays decently in a friendly against maybe a not so great nation. And I think, you know what, I'll revert back to my old guys. And then suddenly the next one, you know, it's like, oh, why didn't you pick Matt Jarvis or, you know, Michael Kitely? Why didn't you pick them players? And then, you know, I click on their players, and then they're like, oh, disappointing to be dropped from the squad. And I'm like, I gave you the opportunity in a friendly, and you didn't impress enough to get in the squad. It's like, there's no logic behind it. You know, they just pick on you for not picking a player you've picked before, and it's like, well, he's not playing well. He's injured. He's got a knock. He's not playing first team football. I can't pick players not playing first team football because I don't know how well they're playing. And it's just like the press conferences there definitely need to be tweaked and need to be improved upon because there's just no logic behind them currently. Anyway, move on. Talking to players to take pay cuts. Of course, there is that option, you know, when you're in money problems to take pay cuts. But an example of this, you know, is Richard Dunn. So Richard Dunn is currently on 18.25 a week. And say if we get, you know, our squad's quite small, we get promoted. I should be able to offer him a contract, and of course he's going to be like, oh, I want 19 grand a week. And then I should be able to, you know, go into the private chat, and then, you know, go to his contract status and tell him to reduce wage demand. Come up with an option like, you know, you're old, you're experienced, we'd like you to be, you know, like a, you know, an experienced player at the side, someone who won't play a lot, won't ask for a lot of wages, and sort of help the future lads, you know, in tutoring and things like that. You know, sort of move them on to the coaching side of things. And that sort of option, you know, signing, you know, many people sign experienced players. I sign experienced players, you know, just to be there. You know, maybe they'll shoot at some youth players, and they're sort of there as third, fourth choice option, you know, for whatever position they're in. And it's just, you know, good backup to have and things like that. But the wage deal they ask for is just so high. And I know this happens in real life, you know, they ask for a lot of wage deal. But then you also see examples of players dropping down the leagues just because they want to play first team football. An example I can think of this is, you know, Chimbonda. You know, currently he's not been at a club for 2 years. He's currently playing non-league football for Droylsden? No, not Droylsden. I don't even know the name of the team, but, you know, they're a pretty unknown non-league team. You know, he doesn't even live near them. He just wants to play football and get back into football. So say if I see, you know, 36, 35, 36-year-old Ricky Lambert, we'll use an example. You know, his career is pretty much over. Maybe I'm a League 1, League 2 side. He'd be great in my side, you know, he'd be one of the first choice players in the side. And I go to offer him a deal and he goes, I want, I don't know, 10 grand a week. And I go, well, I can't offer you that. I can offer you 2 grand a week, you know, 2-year deal, at least securing first team football, you know, maybe adding in a clause, something like, you know, don't play in 5 matches, don't get paid. You know, I mean, don't play 5 matches, sorry, you can get released from your contract, you know, you can release yourself from your contract, you know. If they don't get offered first team football, they can leave. And, you know, some feature like that where, you know, them older experienced players that, you know, would be great in your team, okay, not in the top level they're currently at, but in your team they would be a wonderful, one of the best players to ever grace the field. Maybe you could try and talk them into a lower deal. You know, that's a small feature I could maybe think of. Next, on player screen here, where it talks about caps, it bugs the hell out of me that you can't see under 19s and under 20 caps. This is a poor example because he is from South America, but you know, Titus Bramble, he made 0 England caps and 10 under-21 caps and 1 under-21 goal. But I've had experience in the past where I've gone into maybe my youth squad, you know, I'm looking at players like, oh, this guy's Scottish, you know, I'm an English team, it's quite rare to see a Scottish guy. Well, at least maybe if you don't have the best setup. And I'll go into like their information and nationality, and it's like, oh, he's made a cap for their under-19s level. Why don't I know about this? And it's like, because it's not on the front screen. This is something that personally bugs me, you know, I want to put my point across. I just like the old way where it was like, on the right you'd have your highest ever appearance for your national team, you know, the highest level you've represented them at, whether that was just a sub-appearance for under-21s, or, you know, 20 appearances for your under-19s. It was just nice to know their highest ever level they've played for their national team. And then, of course, on the left, it would have your senior games and things like that. I think they need to revert back to the old way, just because I'd like to see how many appearances they've made for, like, under-19s and things like that, instead of knowing they've not made an appearance for the under-21s. Next. You should be given less control over certain nationality of players when representing their teams in friendlies. So, of course, the big thing is, you know, players are injured currently, like Bale, quote-unquote, is injured. Rooney is, quote-unquote, injured. But yet they've gone to represent their national teams. And in the past, of course, there's been experiences where, you know, people like, I'm gonna name like Ferdinand and Terry. They've been picked in squads, maybe like Lampard and things like that. They've been picked in England squads, but then they've pulled out with quote-unquote injuries. And this is because, of course, you can't physically say, I'm gonna withdraw these people. And of course, maybe some nationalities you can say, I'm going to withdraw this person, but that's why I say certain nationality of players you should be given less control. Because certain nationalities you should say, you could be able to maybe withdraw them, but other nationalities you should maybe be able to say, quote, he is injured. You know, you put forth that quotation. Of course, he's not actually injured, but the national team think he's injured and things like that. You know, it's what happens in real life. You know, the players told they're injured when really we know that they'll make up some excuse like, oh, he looks like he's tugged something, or maybe he's pulled something, or, you know, something that isn't a long-term injury, and then he goes back out and plays at the weekend for their club team. So that's just maybe another little small feature that I'd like to maybe see implicated into the game. You know, injuries, quote-unquote injuries, instead of, you know, just straight up withdrawing people, because of course not many national teams agree with withdrawing players that are fit from their squads. Next, boards should not give you money that you don't physically have. Now, I'm not sure if squads do this, of course, in real life. I don't keep up with finances too much in terms of like, oh, they're going into debt because they spent 30 odd million and things like that. But I believe squads shouldn't offer you. So say right now QPR have a 3 million budget. If I've got a 5 million transfer budget, they shouldn't give me that to spend, because I may spend that, you know, I may not look at the finances. I know some people don't. They may not look at the finances. They may spend that money, and then next year they look at their next year suddenly their wage bill's smaller. They've got no money to spend. And of course, they don't know why. It's because they spent all their money last year that they physically didn't have and they physically couldn't make back. So, I think that would be something that needs to be put into the game. And also, when you're entering the red. So currently, I'm predicted to enter the red. Now, beforehand, you know, we've approached the end of the transfer market, but when we get in January, they should tell me my wage bill has to be slashed. You know, they slash it down to maybe 700 grand a week. And, you know, I'm forced to sell players, otherwise I get sacked. And I think that's something that really needs to happen as well, because that happens, you know, squads, they hit financial bumps in the road, and they have to start selling players, you know, mid-season, things like that. And I think that is something that needs to be put into the game, because finances in football have really taken a hit in recent times. Of course, you know, the world is pretty much fucked financially. So football can not escape that. So that's something that I believe should be put into the game. You know, halfway through the season, your wage bill is suddenly a bit smaller than what it was at the start of the season. You have to accommodate your team to that new wage bill. And sticking on the idea of finances here, big backers or your chairman pulling out of the investment of the club, and suddenly your club deteriorates and goes into a bad financial situation. A couple of big ones here, of course, Angie Makachikala, their current owner, their billionaire owner, has pulled out and he said, you know, you've got to take your wage bill from 100 odd million a year, second only to Zenit, and drop that down to 30-40 million a year in a pretty mid-table wage budget, and, you know, start developing through the youth, because he will no longer finance the squad as he feels it's not a sound investment. And, you know, he lost money in stocks and things like that, but we'll ignore that bit. And just look at the club side of it. Maybe that could happen. Birmingham have had their owner, of course. Things have happened to their owner. West Ham in the past have had an Icelandic owner. He lost all his money and stuff. Maybe it doesn't have to be as detailed as that, but maybe it can be like, chairman pulls out funds. He wants to leave clubs. Clubs up for sale. All players are up for sale. He's not willing to fund a wage anymore. Things like that. Sudden things like that would be a really great feature to the side. It would cause a hell of a challenge, of course. But it does happen in football. And again, if you want to try and make FM realistic, you've got to kind of put in the financial downside to it nowadays. And next couple I want here are to do with fans and ownership. They're the last three, so we're going to go through them as well. So fans lose faith in manager. So this has of course happened in recent times as well. Blackburn have gone through many managers. I know that's more owners, but fans lost patience in Steve Keane, and Wolves manager's been sacked. Their fans have just lost patience in them and stuff like that. I think fans should play more of a part in how quickly you could possibly get sacked. So say if you lose to a rival and then you start losing a lot of games in a row, the fans get on your back. The fans really, really don't like you. And that puts the board in a real mind. When we go into the confidence, I'll go into right now. Maybe fans' confidence. It says results. I think results really should matter a lot more, and I think the fans should have a lot more of a say on how important you get sacked and things like that. You sell their fan favourite. I expect the player rating to shoot really far down. They're really on edge. A couple of bad results and they could be on your back like that. That's how important I believe fans are to the game, and I think that's the sort of feature we should be looking to add into FM. Next one is a relationship with boards. I believe this should be important as well. Interacting with your board. If you repeatedly ask for questions or repeatedly ask for more funds, maybe you grind them up the wrong way, and this should vary. Maybe how much money you get or how quickly they are to sack you. I think there should be more differences depending on your board, and that can actually lead me on to my very last point as well. Boards, I think chairmen should have characteristics. So maybe you have information. It's like, Roman Abramovich, quick on the trigger happy, quick to sack. Maybe you have someone like, who's an example I can think of, who's got a lot of patience. I can't really think. Not many people have much patience nowadays. Let me stare at the Premier League for a bit. Arsenal. There you are. Arsenal. Have a lot of patience. Their owners. And that's. I think characteristics like that are important. Roman Abramovich. You lose 3 or 4 games in a row. Suddenly he's trigger happy. That could be your relationship. Say if you've won the club a couple of trophies, your relationship with your owner, of course, is going to be amazing. If you're making a profit every month, again, your relationship with your owner is going to be very good. But then therefore he might give you a bit more. He might be a bit more patient in the sacking. But if you're losing a lot of games, if you're making a loss every month, if you're asking for new stadiums left, right, and centre and training facilities and things like that, you can grind up the manager the wrong way. If you say the wrong things in the press conference, you grind him up the wrong way. He can be on your back like that again. It's features like that I think it would be interesting to add to the game. Adding dynamic characteristics into fans and board and backroom members, over that managing directors or chairmen and things like that, and owners. So that's pretty much all I have written down in this notepad, so we'll shut that down. Don't save that. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy some of the features. I like to hear maybe your features as well. Put that down below. Features you'd like to see implemented into the game. Couple I would really want to push forward with though is the director of football thing I put forward at the beginning. The under 18s and reserve managing things, and owners being a bit more dynamic and maybe a bit more trigger happy. So yeah, this is it for now, guys. I will get on to recording this QPR live comma against Charlton. So until next time, guys, peace out.